In today's video lecture, I shall be taking up the poem My Mother at 66 by Kamala Das, contained in the literature reader Flamingo. Before moving on to the explanation of the poem, let us talk a little about the poet Kamala Das, the mother of the modern Indian English poetry. Now, why is she regarded as the mother of the modern Indian English poetry? Children, because on account of her extensive contribution to the poetry in our country, she earned the label of the mother of modern Indian English poetry. She wrote in English during the post-colonial era. Now, when I say the post-colonial era, that means when India became independent from the clutches of the British. Her style of writing poetry is often referred to as the confessional style. Children, this poem is also confessional in nature. What is the confessional style of writing poetry? When the poetry describes the personal, the person itself, or it focuses on the I, on the extreme moments of an individual experience. It could be a personal trauma, it could focus on some illness, like in this case, the poem that we are going to read, it focuses on the fear, the regret that the poet feels, and the torture that she experiences because of the fear. And hence, this poetry can be categorized as a confessional poem. Let us move on to the next slide now. Let us read a little more about the poet, children. Kamala Das, or Kamala, was born on 31st March 1934 and she passed away on 31st May 2009. Popularly known by her one-time pen name Madhavi Kutti and married name Kamala Das. So she was popularly known as Kamala Das and her pen name was Madhavi Kutti. She was an Indian poet in English as well as an author in Malayalam from Kerala, India. Her popularity in Kerala is based chiefly on her short stories and her autobiographies. So this made her popular, children, her short stories and her autobiographies. Written under the name Kamala Das. She was also a widely read columnist and wrote on diverse topics including women's issues. And she was also a feminist, children, because she widely wrote on women issues. Let us move on to the central theme contained in the poem. In the poem, My Mother at 66, the Indian poet Kamala Das expresses her love towards her mother. She describes her love and attachment for her mother, who is aging day by day. Children, in this poem, the poet talks about the natural process of aging, and she has described her mother, who is aging day by day. She has become dull, colorless, and her face is wrinkled. She realizes that her mother has turned pale, dull, colorless. The realization of losing her someday tortures the poet, but she was not able to express her feelings to the old mother. But then she could not express these feelings to her mother. When she went inside the airport, she waved goodbye and smiled at her continuously, at her mother, okay, who was there at the airport. She was there to see her off. And while entering the airport, the poet, she turned back and she waved goodbye and continuously she was smiling, as if she was hiding her feelings of fear and regret. Okay, two dominant feelings, children, over here, of fear as well as regret. The smile is also a positive feeling which the poet wants to express at the end of the poem. And how has she expressed it? She wants to say goodbye to her mother with a hope that they would meet again in the future. Now that last line, children, and all I did was smile, smile and smile. Now this repetition is very significant. Now what is the significance of this repetition? We will take this up during our detailed explanation. A number of poetic devices have been used in the poem to heighten the effect of aging and fear. Let us move on to the explanation of the poem now. Let us begin with the explanation of the poem, children. Children, like I have already told you, the poet, she chronicles the very real fear faced by all children, the fear of separation from their parents. And how is this fear prominent inside the poet? Because from the very childhood, she feels that her mother would grow old and then she would pass away someday. So this fear was very prominently deep rooted inside the heart of the poet. So the fear of separation from their parents, every child has this fear inside him or her. And the poet, she chronicles. Chronicles means over here, she narrates or she tells the tale of this fear, that how it has grown with her and how it is deeply rooted inside her. So she chronicles. The thought that her mother may not live long fills the poet with a poignant fear and insecurity. Along with that fear, children, there is a feeling of insecurity too. And what is the mood of the poet? Children, she is emotional. She is in a melancholic mood. Okay, melancholy, sad, emotional mood. Line 1, driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning. The poet, she had come to visit her mother. Now she is driving to the Cochin airport to catch a flight back home and return to her familial responsibilities. She is now married and has to return to her husband, her children, her familial responsibilities. I saw my mother beside me, doze, open-mouthed, her face ashen like that of a corpse. Her mother, she is sitting beside her as she is going to see her off. The old mother was sitting beside the daughter because the mother was going to the airport to see her off. Now, during the drive to the airport, children, the poet notices that her mother is dozing, open-mouthed. What does it mean? That you must have noticed, children, old people, they sitting on the chair, they go off to sleep with their mouth open and they are dozing, sleeping. She lacks all the vitality and has no control over her reflexes. So what does it show? That she has lost all her control over her reflexes due to her old age. The mother's face was ashen like that of a corpse. The mother's ashen means over here pale face, looks just like the face of a dead body. Corpse, children, is a dead body and realized with pain. Now the sight of the lifeless visage of her mother. Visage over here means, children, the face, the head portion, the face, okay, the visage of her mother makes the poet realize that she is aging and inching close to death and she may lose her soon. So the poet, this is a painful reminder to the poet that the mother is already aged and she is inching close to death and she might lose her soon. Let's move ahead. That she was as old as she looked. That she was as old as she looked means her face was wrinkled, it was pale, dull, lifeless. Yes, that did reflect her true age. She was indeed very aged and inching close to death. But soon put that thought away and looked out at young trees sprinting. Now, unable to confront the thought of losing her mother, the poet focuses or shifts her attention to the happier things outside the moving car. She is unable to confront this bitter reality, children. However, we will soon see that she could not keep herself away from this reality for long. She couldn't keep herself away from this reality for long. She had to return to this bitter reality. But she focuses and shifts her attention to happier things outside the moving car. And what does she see? And looked out at the trees sprinting. Young trees sprinting. What does it mean, children? It's an image. It's an image of youth, of vitality, enthusiasm and energy. So here, children, the trees, they have been personified. So the poetic devices used here is personification. The trees are described as sprinting because the poet looks at them from inside a moving car, and the trees, they seem to run in the opposite direction. The car was heading towards the airport at a very high speed, and in the opposite direction, the trees seemed to run in the opposite direction at a high speed. She was passing all the trees outside. Okay. So the image of the sprinting trees is an image of vitality, of enthusiasm, and the poetic device used here is personification. The merry children spilling out of their homes. Again, the image of merry children spilling out of their homes. Children, here it's a metaphor. And how is it a metaphor? Because the image of happy and joyful, energetic children rushing out of their homes to play. So this is a metaphor over here. The image of the children who are happy, joyful, energetic, they are rushing out of their homes to play. So the poetic device used here is metaphor. Both these images are in total contrast to the dull and the lifeless image that is of the mother. Okay, both these images, that is the young trees sprinting and the merry children spilling out of their homes, are in total contrast to the dull and the melancholic environment that is there inside the car. Just like the late winter's moon loses its radiance, children. Okay, let's read. But after the airport's security check. Okay, let me just explain you one more line over here, children. Just like the late winter's moon, children, it loses its radiance due to the fog and mist. The mother has lost her vitality due to the ill health and old age. Okay, so winter's moon over here, what do you mean by it? It is again an image that has been created. We will be reading about it. I have just drawn a comparison over here because it is the same dull and depressing environment that is there inside the moving car. So the images, the two images over here, the sprinting trees and the merry children spilling out of their homes, are in total contrast to the dull and the melancholic environment that is there inside the car. But after the airport security check, standing a few yards, and finally they reached the airport, and after the initial security checkups and all, she was just at a little distance from the mother and she waved her goodbye. Let's see what happens then. Let's move on to the next slide, children. Children, whatever notes I am giving and whatever explanation I am giving, you have to jot it down. Listen to this explanation again if required and jot down everything. And looked away. I looked again at her, wan, pale as a late winter's moon, and felt that old familiar ache. Please underline very important lines of the poem. As a late winter's moon and felt that old familiar ache. Children, but after the initial security check, what happened? She was there standing at a distance, waving at her mother. She turned again and looked at her, wan, pale. Wan means dull, colorless, pale. So just like the late winter's moon, children, it loses its radiance, it loses. And why? Because of the fog and the mist that settles in the air. What happens? The mother also has lost her vitality due to the ill health and old age. Okay, so she has been compared rightly to the late winter's moon, which again symbolizes old age, something that is very dull. Although the poet tries to focus on happier images of sprinting trees and merry children, she is disturbed and she becomes anxious once again when she looks at her mother after the airport security check. Okay, she has just tried to divert her attention, but then what did I tell you? She couldn't stay away from reality for long. Nobody can stay away from reality. These happier moments that she saw, the happy moments that she saw outside the moving car, they were all temporary refuge for the poet, children. So it disturbed and made her anxious when she looked at her mother once again after the airport security check. And what did she find? She finds her mother looking wan. Wan is colorless, and therefore feels that she is inching close to death. So again, that same pain, fear returns to the poet. It's her childhood fear. But all I said was, see you soon, Amma. All I did was smile and smile and smile. So here, children, she finds her mother looking very dull and wan, and she realizes that she is inching close to death. Familiar ache over here, the pain. This is the pain that the poet has experienced as a child, the fear of losing her mother to death. The last line now, but all I said was, see you soon, Amma. All I did was smile and smile and smile. In spite of the fear of losing her mother, children, the poet puts up a brave front. Okay, she puts up a brave front, and while parting ways, what does she say to her mother? See you soon, Amma. Okay, she gives her an assurance that we'll meet soon, Amma. Actually, the poet tries to give hope and confidence to her mother that they will meet again. So she is giving the parting words, it's giving hope and confidence to the mother, an assurance that they would meet soon, to reassure herself that everything will be fine and they will meet again. Also, not only to the mother but also to herself, an assurance that they would meet again. Now, what is the significance of the line, all I did was smile and smile and smile? It's a repetition used here, children. The poetic device used here is repetition. The poet tries to hide her anxiety and fear of losing her mother behind the facade of a smile. So here it is, just a false smile that she is wearing. It's not coming from her heart. Just a false smile that is where she is wearing, and behind it she is hiding perhaps her guilt. Behind this smile she is hiding perhaps her guilt, her fear of not being able to stay to take care of her mother. So what is the guilt all about? The guilt is because of not being able to stay back to take care of her aged mother. So the smile over here has a significance, children. It is to give an assurance to the mother that they would meet soon, to give an assurance to the poet herself that everything will be fine and they will meet again. And also it is perhaps hiding her guilt guilt of not being able to stay to take care of her mother. So with this, children, we come to the end of the explanation. The question answers, RTCs, I will be taking up in the next class. Thank you and have a good day.